If folks would like to find a place to sit, we'll get started in a couple of seconds. Yeah, the lighting just doesn't work for me here. Okay, I think it's probably a good time to get started with a business meeting. First, the good news, unlike past years, I don't think we have a lot of controversy this year. There's only about 2 topics. Well, okay, there will be the usual suspects will start trouble, but I don't have any trouble on the slides. So, but actually, I think there's one important topic that's been on our minds for a long time that we really need to have a serious conversation about. But let me just go through the boilerplate stuff that we have to do every year. As some of you knew, when I took over as chair, the first thing I did was throw out all of the boring reports about finances. But just to give you a sense of where we're at, if you're interested, reports on the PC, on finances, on registration, demographics, all that sort of stuff is all available online. All of the sort of leads for the organization have put together reports, but rather than make you sit through half an hour of that, you can just look for it online. The high bits of this are that financially we're doing good. If you don't know, there's really 2 parts. We are in IEEE Security and Privacy Symposium, which is a conference which has its own budget. There's something called the TC, which is the technical committee that I'm the chair of, and it is the thing that oversees all of the conferences, including things like CSF and all of the associated conferences. The TC, we had $30,000. This year, we didn't have much to spend it on, so we gave it all to students. Probably over 25,000 of that 30,000 went to students this year. IEEE Security and Privacy, the conference did really well. I'll get into a little bit of that more in a minute. Financially, we're about $11,000 in the black. Past years, we've been about $50,000 in the black, but we drank all of that, I think, last night. The PC, we continue to grow. We had 402 submissions with a 55 of those being accepted, which is a 13.7% acceptance rate. And then our workshops were doing really well. Our attendance continues to grow at an accelerated rate, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. Right now, it says 35% students on this slide. In the end, it was actually due to some late registrations. We actually, at this conference, has 39% of the attendees are actually students. So this is a very student-heavy conference, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But just to get to the point, a couple of key points of things that we've done over the last year. I've worked very closely with Michael Bacchus in creating a new conference, a sister conference to this conference, which will be in Europe, a la the model of Eurocrypt. There is Euro SMP. It is on the docket. The submission deadline is this August. It will occur next March. And it proves to be, it's looking to be a very competitive conference. It's going to be a very strong conference, in my opinion. For those of you, I think we have some of the organizers, Dave Ballinson in the room, and some of the other NDSS organizers. We did not put this here intentionally. We tried to space this out. There was no good place to put it on the schedule. We kept both the submission and the conference date away from NDSS. It was the best we could do. All apologies to ISOC. The other major, I shouldn't say major, the thing that's sort of happening with the organizations with this and all of the conferences, we're all moving green, we're going green. We are abandoning the physical proceedings. They became too cumbersome, and with 55 papers, you really get to 2 volumes and carrying 30 pounds back with you home, which normally ends in the trash in your hotel room. So far, the response has been pretty positive. You know, people are either ambivalent. I mean, I, like many, have a sort of a sentimental attachment to physical proceedings, but it just doesn't make financial sense. If you feel really strongly like you want a physical copy, I'm sure Kinko's can help you out. So the points of discussion. The first thing I want to do is vote in the TC, and I'll finish up with a couple of notes, but I'm stepping down as the TC chair. My term is up, and as part of that process, Ulf here, our vice chair, is going to be stepping into the chair role next year for a 2-year stint, and we are here to, whoever is in the room, here to vote in a new vice chair. And I would like to start the nominations. I'm one slide ahead. I would like to start the nominations with Sean Peiser. Where's Sean? He's here. He has been involved in the organization, I think, 3.5 years so far. And no hyperbole, he has been simply the best general chair we've ever had. No offense to all the past general chairs in the room. I haven't had to do anything. He's been on top of things. We had an informal vote on the TC via email, and there was unanimous support for him. So looking for a nomination, looking for a second. We have a second for Sean Peiser. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, then all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, Sean, you are my condolences. So an open discussion that we've had over many years. Some of us that have been around for a while can remember at IEEE Security and Privacy, in which we had 17 papers in them. We have now grown. We are now accepting 13.7% of our papers. There are many more papers that are publishable, in my opinion. And the reality is that every year we're growing. The importance of what we do is growing. The amount of funds, the amount of organizations that wish to participate in pro ball research that is represented in this conference increases every year. So we're going to need to find more room, you know, whether it's next year or 2 years down the road. I think other organizations related to security, for example, the IACR that run the crypto conferences, have learned this. There are lots of ways we can add papers, but one thing I wanted to ask the community, and that's why we have these mics up, is how do we actually want to do this? Some have made the argument that it's inevitable that we go to a multi-track world, just because that's, you know, the volume of papers is just getting to that stage. But there are other approaches. I'd like to hear how people feel about the 20-minute talks. I've heard people that like it. I heard other people say that the quality of presentations at this length isn't what one would expect for a venue such as this. And then there's another possibility of, while it's not even sure that this would be tractable within our current contract structure, adding some additional time like a 4th day, although that's a lot of conference fatigue for me. So I'd like to cast it out to people to give opinions. And Luyo, you're stepping out as chair, so you know, maybe you can step up to the mic and give some opinions on how you want to do this.
Right, thanks for putting me in the spot.
You're welcome.
So I do feel like, in my opinion about this has changed a little bit recently with my experience with this year's conference. I think, particularly because this conference is so broad, I think it's important to not let the acceptance rate fall too low. I think when the acceptance rate falls too low, we start totally missing some areas or just get one paper in an area, and our method for selecting papers is imperfect, as we all know, and so if we're accepting only one paper in an area, maybe it winds up not being the best paper. So it's much nicer to have 2 or 3, and then we're more or less guaranteed to have some strong papers there. So I feel like anything that lets us add more papers in the long run as the submission rate increases is good. I think, for my perspective, 20-minute talks are perfectly fine. I think many very well-known conferences have moved to that model and seem to be okay. I understand that for the topics that are very dear to our hearts, 20 minutes of course isn't enough. But again, because the conference is so broad, the 20 minutes is probably enough for 80% of the topics that are not quite so dear to our hearts. I think if this conference were at a different time of year when we all had to teach, then for me at least, adding a day would be a non-starter in terms of attendance. Given that it's after the semester ends for many of us, maybe adding a day is okay, but I kind of feel that eventually dual tracking is inevitable. Maybe not for a couple of years, particularly if a day gets added, but eventually.
Okay, so and nothing we're discussing here is binding. We're basically looking, the new chair's Michael Acosta, who's, if you don't know, he's next year's chair. We're going to have to get creative because we very well could find ourselves receiving 800 submissions next year and have ourselves with 80 papers. So if people feel strongly that 4 days is a non-starter, that's worth hearing, or multi-track. Hillary?
The acceptance rate is now 50% higher than it was a few years ago. It's hard to deal with an increasing number of submitted papers and to raise the acceptance rate at the same time. I don't quite know where these curves are going. Did you want a 20% acceptance rate? Because that was a goal that was advocated some years ago. No chance for 20. Well, time is something different. For me, because the field is so broad, 20-minute talks aren't enough. You barely get the context before the talk is over and they're asking for questions. So I don't like the 20-minute talks so much, although some people, maybe a 5 or 6 minute talk would be fine. I would like to see some more innovation in this, but 4 days is too much.
Okay. Please.
I'd like to know what the distribution of papers from Europe and papers from the United States is, and what the prediction, you can't possibly know, but what the prediction might be that the number of papers submitted to the California conference will be offset by a whole bunch of them going to the Europe conference.
You know, that's probably unknowable. Do we know what the mix was this year? Yeah. Yeah, they occupy at different times of the year. So it's, I mean, I think we'll learn a lot, I think, over the next year or two. Ulfar.
Well, since nobody's standing by a mic saying anything, I might as well. I think one of the things I really like about Oakland compared to larger venues, multi-track like CCS, is that it gives me a sense of all of the things that the community thinks are important. And everybody gets the same sense, so there's only one track. Everybody at least has traditionally mostly attended the sort of talks. There's been less of the hallway thing than at many other venues. Personally, I don't mind the 20-minute talks. I find that when forced to give a shorter thing and be more concise, some talks improve anyway.
Would you be willing to spend 4 days?
I think that's better than multi-track, but I don't know if I don't know why the acceptance rate has to continue going up. I think even if we sample, like we had 4 papers on side channels and so on this afternoon, and even if we have to sort of sample some fields and have 3 papers instead of 4 or 5, then there will be other venues like Euro S&P where the other papers could get a good representation.
That's a legitimate, but if the submissions get us under 10%, I don't think that's healthy for the community. That's my opinion. But I think we have 2 pressures here. So. Okay.
Well, I just want to add the note when we're talking about adding days that we also have the workshops that have become quite important to the whole organization and let people get much more detailed and specific in particular topic areas. So while we have this great a general conference that covers, soup to nuts in security and privacy. We've got these specific areas of workshops that are with us. And if we go too many days, and I don't know how far that could be, but if we start marching further into the week, it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, to sort of co-locate the workshops and have people attend too.
This was actually, when we were, prior to this, we had the discussion amongst some of the TC members that would it make sense to actually have the last day parallel the workshops, although that punishes some set of papers and some workshop attendance. So I'm not sure that there would be a lot of difficult problems to solve. Please.
Okay, so I have some random thoughts that are not well formed and extremely mutually inconsistent. So, all right, so the Euro, I want to call it Euro Oakland, and you totally should have called it Euro Oakland. So we're not talking about that right now, but it's related to this because of the thought that maybe Euro Oakland will take some of the submissions that would ordinarily come here. And if we do expect that, I'm going to propose something a little radical, which is that a rejected paper from one may not be submitted to the other. I see Robert nodding, because otherwise it just doubles the number of papers we have.
Anything rejected from one goes to the other, so they both end up reviewing 400 papers. It's usually twice the reviewer.
Yeah, but that's...
That's what normally happens because they bounce around the venues. So
Yeah.
there's just one more place for them to go.
Right? I know this is a radical idea
yeah.
and a tough sell. I would in fact prefer, while we're talking about Euro Oakland, that Euro Oakland not exist, but instead Oakland sometimes is in Europe. Or even
Yeah,
sometimes out of the Bay Area. Oh my God.
I was crucified for bringing that up, but
Yeah, I know.
It's another discussion. So since you opened that door and we weren't going to talk about it, so you gave me the mic, so I'm going to use it. So last year we had that discussion about whether Oakland should move to switch topics entirely, and there was resounding in the business meeting. The resounding was no way, don't do it. However, when we did the survey, there was slightly ambivalence to slightly leaning towards moving it. So there seemed to be the business people truly invested in the community who show up to the business meeting seem to be for keeping it here, whereas the general community seems to want to move it. So I don't know how to resolve that, and luckily I don't have to. That's Ulf's problem next year. But I think this is a continuing conversation. So I'm going to get on my soapbox. I think it's not fair to have it in San Francisco. It's not fair to have everyone on the East Coast have to come here every year.
Or Europe, or Asia.
The East Coast. The West Coast of the East Coast, whatever. So I agree with you. I think that's an issue that we brought to the table, and I think we need to resolve that one. As far as the paper cycle, the never-ending tweak this, answer this, send it to the next, that's what's gumming up the works. And they get larger and larger, these pipes, because we don't have enough slots for paper. We are rejecting, and I'm going to say this with authority, at 13.7%, we are leaving good research on the floor.
On the table, absolutely.
I think our acceptance rates are too low, and I think the reasons are for historical reasons. I think we need to change that.
Right. So other ones of my crazy ideas.
You got me started.
So the 20-minute talks, I think they're okay. I slightly prefer longer talks, but I'm coming around to the 20-minute idea, especially if we have this kind of pressure. But so yesterday I attended 20 talks, and my brain was kind of done, right? Sessions with 5 talks in them are too many talks, and 20 talks in a day is too many talks. Like, you can't, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but my brain exploded by the end of it.
Yeah, it's.
But it's
let's get one more question, because I think we
really honestly enjoyed all the talks.
So I think we got a couple of the topics I do want to get to, so maybe we can get one more set of comments.
But if we just shrink, like maybe have the morning session have 3 like the morning and the afternoon each have 3 shorter sessions, have an extra break in there, even a shorter break, give your brain time to recover. I don't know. Okay, other people.
So let me, well, we'll do a couple short comments. I have a proposal on how we might want to resolve this. Or not resolve it, but have to come to some kind of decision so we can move forward. Go ahead.
Okay, so my sense, having served as the PC co-chair this year, is that there is a fundamental supply problem. As the supply of papers, the number of submissions is increasing, it's going to be increasing, and none of the little solutions like shorter talks or something like this, extra days, is going to solve that. So in not too distant future, maybe next year, maybe 2 years from now, something radical will need to be done. Either then some restriction, and people are going to hate this, but something will have to happen. There will have to be either restriction on resubmitting previously rejected papers, or some limit on the number of papers a single submitter can appear on. You know, you pick your 2 best papers or 3 best papers, and you submit them to Auckland. Not 8, not 9, not 10, something like this.
Or token bucket.
People are going to hate this, but supply will have to be restricted. Or going to some NIPS-like model where there are 2 categories of papers, sort of there are a select few that are accepted for oral presentations and others that are sort of accepted to the proceedings but don't get oral slots. But something will have to be done because the real problem is on the supply side. It's not tinkering with the formats that we're talking about now. So something will have to happen there.
There's another solution, you know, Vitali. Maybe you can have a more conference.
What?
Maybe you can have a more conference, right? You know, you have a more place to submit a paper. Then you can diversify, right? You know,
experience shows that this is like highway driving. By building more highways, you do not like.
People still like this way, right?
Unlimited capacity for producing an unlimited number of papers. I don't know how they do it, but it's growing and it fills the carrying capacity of every conference in existence. That's just an empirical observation. That's
Okay.
it.
Thanks, Vital. Paul?
3 points I'll try to make quickly. One, with respect to the thing Ian suggested about if you submit to Euro Oakland, you can't submit to Oakland or vice versa. That sort of, I think in isolation, that's just a non-starter because as you noted, it's the cycle of all the other things. And unless you get all the other conferences to sign on, there's no point in just separating out these 2 in isolation, I think. Yeah, but in practice, that doesn't matter. Okay, fine. Are you volunteering to do that? I don't want to go there. So the other things are, so the cycle of I can't remember the second one, so I'll jump to the third. I think the need to move to multi-tracks is not something, you know, to me, it's already passed. I think that, you know, like you said, you know, we're leaving good papers on the floor, and cramming even more into the space or adding another half a day or something is you know, a Band-Aid. I think you move to multiple tracks and suddenly you can take a lot more papers. Yes, I have resisted. I was program chair the first time CCS moved to multi-tracks, and I was really very mixed about it. But
I would claim it's worked pretty well for CCS, though.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's evolved. And Usenix Security, the same thing. I mean, it's not ideal. We're giving up something, but I think it's just with if you don't want to have this crazy low acceptance rate, I don't see anything else as really solving it.
Yeah. So I want to just, I mean, we have a much more potentially controversial conversation coming. So maybe I'll just ask everybody to do one last quick thing, and then I'm going to make a proposal. So maybe we'll start. Chris, Cynthia,
Okay,
please.
my proposal is, and this is really wacky, I would like to suggest that what we do is create videotapes of the presentations ahead of time, and that they're like YouTube TED Talks, and we see the presentations, we read the papers, look at the presentations, and come here and have maybe 15-minute talks or something where there's a couple of slides, but you've already watched the 30-minute talk on YouTube or whatever, and looked at the paper, and we have the discussion here instead of the presentation. So that's different.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to have to start doing some innovative stuff. So I think you've been here for a while.
Oh yeah. Just I think that the idea just suggests very interesting, and also I think moving to the multi-track, right, dual-track, multi-track is something inevitable. This is good for the community because that means that there are more and more people getting to this community, right? And also, just when it comes to the, just acceptance rate, I think the acceptance rate for the good paper should be reasonable. But it does not mean, the overall acceptance rate should be high. And, and I'm a kind of supporter. You have a very high acceptance rate if the author, the paper submit is very decent. For example, I think Usenix this year, they have something I think is quite interesting, right? If the paper is resubmitted, you should submit something, and compare with your early version. What is the difference, right? You have a chance to do something like this. And I think if you have the paper serious resubmission, I think the acceptance rate in this category should be higher.
I like the idea of having, if it's a resubmit, requiring them to document what's changed since the previous version. I'm not sure that's policeable, but it seems like a reasonable approach. So I just want to get two quick questions because we got to move on.
So I just wanted to make a comment. So in the 90s and earlier, people were graduating with PhDs with maybe one paper in a venue like Oakland. And so there is a problem on the supply side, for sure. There is also some hope. So Fred, who's in the audience here, has been spearheading this new memo that just came out, the CRA memo, Computer Research Association, that those memos actually have weight in tenure decisions and in hiring. And that new memo suggests that those committees looking to hire new faculty or promote to tenure look at fewer papers, which means that it's not the guy who has 13 papers that gets the job, but it's the one who has one or two really good papers. So there is some hope that over time this will reduce the supply side.
Sure. One last quick.
Yeah, so I just want to say real quick, have we dismissed the idea of having the deadline come before the NDSS rejection notifications come out?
That's something that's easily done, I think.
I feel like that would get rid of probably 50 papers off the top that have barely been changed. And
Yeah,
people are
I mean,
just,
that'll help, but I don't think it gets rid of the systemic problem. So I'm going to make a recommendation. My recommendation, what do people think about me putting together maybe like four of the last PC chairs that are interested in participating in coming up with a solution? Did you have something you wanted to just chime in with?
I'm Fred Schneider, for those of you who don't know me. There are many communities that are having the same problem that we or you are. And there are other solutions to contain the load. One example that nobody mentioned and that you might want to think about it is to have people submit papers to the institution, have them be reviewed as a journal paper, have comments go back, have this iterate with some standing committee, and when a paper gets good enough, it gets published in the proceedings and the author is given an opportunity to present it at the next Oakland conference. You do that, you can ensure that you've got really polished papers, you'll control the size of the conference, and you'll switch this whole thing around from this mode where people submit, basically they let the program committees help them write the paper over some number of iterations because they only get the paper accepted. So anyway, what's happening is the traditional notion of a conference and a journal are being teased apart. So one thing has to do with frequency, one thing has to do with refereeing, another thing detaches when presentations occur. And because of electronic submission and so on, you can imagine doing this. I know this is done in the database community, and it's been done quite successfully. So these strikes me as really incremental solutions. The problem is not an incremental problem, and I know I just proposed something that's radically different, but it will take a while for the CRA memo to take effect. And there are ways to make this a really exciting set of lectures and to ensure that the quality of the papers are not only exciting but polished. And that changes the procedure. Sorry for...
Thanks, Fred.
I just wanted to note to Fred that the PET Symposium has moved to exactly this model this year. And for the first time, we now almost, okay, I don't know, pretty close to this model. And so they now have journal submissions and stuff, and then the things that are accepted for the journal for that year get in. And I mean, we haven't even had the first PETs where it happens, but so far it seems to be quite successful. Right. Right. Yes.
So I think there are several models, some which change the publication model. I think we need to take a step back. Do people feel comfortable about a handful of PC chairs and some of the TC members taking over for just a little while, coming with a proposal back next year? I think we can go one more year without making a move. Come back, have the PC chairs work with the TC to come up with a proposal, present it at the business meeting last year for an up or down vote. People comfortable with that?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I would support it if it were wider than the group that you just named, because they are fairly self-selected and perhaps of a narrow viewpoint. If you could widen that committee a little bit, I think would be a great idea.
Would the community trust me to reach out to representative members to select people? Okay, so there will be a number of PC chairs and then the same number of people that are in general community. I will reach out, we'll make the public, and then we'll come back with a solution next year. That's the next time we have the opportunity to talk to the community. So, I mean, we can certainly publish it online if people are interested. I mean, when we have a solution, we can probably, people will know the solution way in advance. It won't be a surprise. How's that? People...
My concern is that people come back in a year, people will immediately say no, and then we'll just be the same spot.
Yeah,
So many options that most people don't like anything except one option, so there's more opportunities to say no.
Well, so then maybe we just come up with a solution that we're going to try for 1 year and then do a yes or no. People comfortable with that? All in...
I think it would be better to have a few solutions and let the community speak about it.
Okay, well...
Already decided before, that's fine, but everybody should have a chance to speak.
Sure. Then we will make a menu. So or can we make sure we get this? We're going to have a menu of a couple of options that we're going to put together. For those of you I'm going to reach out to, you know who you are. It'll be low touch. I think the decision we're going to make, I think we should probably reach out to some other people like Fred and get some more input on some of these other models and do a little research. Okay? All in favor of that, just say aye. 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 All right, there we go. That was the 2-minute slide. So we're going to engage students. Everybody who likes students, say yay. We're going to look at some options over the next year. We are now 40% students. We need to do more to help them. I think there's lots of things we can do. One of the things we're looking at is a Sunday workshop where we bring in students who are going to be presenting during the week and have them present, have some senior people in the community help them with their presentations. I think there was a pretty wide variance in the quality of student publications over the last couple of days. It'll also give them a chance to meet some senior people in the community and do some networking. Do people feel like this kind of, and this is just a suggestion, but we're going to look at other ways of trying to engage students. Just in principle, do people feel like the conference could do more of these student-oriented things, or do you think it's worth their time? Strikes me as kind of a motherhood principle. All in favor of us exploring this and coming back with some solutions next year? Aye? Okay. All right, here's the big kahuna, open access. So here's where we are. It's a little bit of confusion. Right now, we have the conference links papers on the website for the conference. The authors retain copyright, but grants a right to the Computer Society. The right is exclusive to digitally archive. No one knows really what that means. It's left intentionally vague. And then after 12 months, it becomes publicly available. Now, the important thing to note is that all paper, you can put your paper on your website the day it gets accepted. That's up to you. So the papers are out there. They're on the website while the conference goes on, and available for free after 12 months. So then there's a little bit of a window where they're just not available on the conference website. And so we've had a lot of conversation and quite a bit of controversy over this. And frankly, I've taken a lot of beatings, and I'm not 100% sure I understand what people's end state goal is in this space. Do we care? Are we worried about open access for our papers, IEEE security and privacy? Are we worried that because if that's our worry, it's out there. You know, it's not as easily accessible after the conference is over, but it's available. And it's available for free essentially from the first time it hits somebody's website. If that's our goal, we're there. It's not a perfect, I know there are many people who want a clear, crystal clear statement of capitulation to this open access policy from IEEE. We're not getting it. And there's lots of reasons for that that I'll get to in a couple minutes. If our goal is to have IEEE writ large make all of their papers open access, then we have a much bigger challenge, and that is that we are the only organization, at least in my conversations with the Computer Society and the IEEE, that's actually asking for it. So if we are standing and waiting for them to change the entire policy for IEEE, we have to do more. We have to go become evangelists. And I'm not certain that the TC, people in my job, at least for the next couple of months, are the right people to do that. If that's something that we see as a priority for the organization, then we got to put more skin in the game. We got to go out there and we have to talk to the other organizations to explain why it's important. And through these other organizations and through talking to these other communities, that's how we get to the open access. But us, sort of, and please don't take this the wrong way, but refusing to sit on PCs doesn't do anything. I know it feels satisfying, but it has absolutely zero impact on IEEE's policy for open access. So my first question is, what is our goal? And if our goal is for the larger, then how do we get there? Because we're not doing the right kinds of things. People understand what I'm asking? So for those of you who feel strongly about open access, what is our goal? I'll put you on the spot, Dave. I know you've talked about open access. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry, David. But of course I do.
So as a community, I think getting the papers on the website for the conference is the big win, and we should be happy with that. And in terms of, I totally agree with you that that's not this community's battle to fight with IEEE to go beyond that. Like, the fact that the papers are available for free and on the conference website should be viewed as a win, and the fact that authors can post their papers. Oh, are they taking them down after? Oh, yeah. Well, okay, then we should be fighting for them to stay up. Why are they taking them down after?
But they're available on everybody's website.
So why not leave them on the conference site after?
It's a trade-off with the IEEE.
So, I think that the larger, moral issues with open access, I don't think are this community's or the TC's, issue. Serving the conference and our community well by keeping the papers available is, and taking them off the website seems like there's still a battle fight if they're not willing to keep them on the site after the conference.
Okay, so then what do we do?
That seems like the battle that the TC and this community should be fighting, and the larger issues are not up to
Don't get me wrong, we're still fighting it, right? It's not like I go home and say, I get my piece of the IEEE money. They've come a long way, right? I mean, they've come a long way. Papers are available if you know how to use Google. I mean, at some point, do we want to get to the next step? And then what's it going to take to get to that next step? I mean, so far, I think there's little acts of defiance. But if we want to say something to this community, well, let's say something to this community. If we feel strongly enough, if we want to get the IEEE's attention, then what we should do is we should say, this is what we want. And if we don't, we're going to take the whole kit and the caboodle, CSF, IEEE security privacy, Euro S&P, and we're going to take it straight to Usenix, right? that's the kind of skin in the game we have to have. But these little acts of defiance and beating up people who are trying to help isn't helping anything. And I think we need to make a decision about what we want and how we get there. And I'm not really sure we've had that clarity of vision. And that's a leadership problem, and I think I could have done something better over the last couple of years. But that's the kind of moment of clarity I've had over the last couple of months. Ian?
So I was actually very pleasantly surprised at the new policy, and I'm pretty happy with it. It, in fact, does various governments, certainly Canada has a new rule that any federally funded research has to be publicly available after 12 months, and oh look, it is. And I understand NSF is thinking about something similar or something like that, and NIH is... Okay, you're going to talk to that? Okay, great. So NSF will talk about that in just a second. But yeah, NSERC just has a new policy that went into effect 4 days ago. Wow. That any federally funded research has to be available open access after at most 12 months. Right. So this worked out great. So I've been a big fighter for open access. I would prefer that 12-month window wasn't there.
Totally agree.
I'm willing to take it. I am not pushing for change IEEE at this point because I have better things to do. I'm not willing to die on that hill.
Yeah.
Okay, Sven Dietrich, Technical Activities Committee Chair at Computer Society. So I've been listening to this open access discussion for a few years now, and I'm moving forward, I'm pushing forward within the Computer Society and with IEEE to make progress here. So there is also something called CS Open. I've been talking with the IP folks at the Computer Society. There's something called CS Open, which can put out the submitted versions out there in an open website, no paywall. That is available right now.
So can we move to that model?
That is available now. You can the edited papers that the Computer Society takes will go into a CSDL and IEEE Explorer. But the submitted versions go into an open website called CS Open. The product is called CS Open, and Lynn can correct me on the exact wording. Yeah. But there is a vehicle there that can move in the direction that the community wants. So as I fight towards getting the policies changed and that it goes away from just experimental, because that's a discussion that comes up in our TAC meetings every year, where all the TCs come together. This is something that has come forward in the last few months, and it may be useful to you.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of stuff. So the truth is that it is evolving quickly. I know Trent, surprise. ACM has something in the books. Is that public yet? On open access? So the ACM has got them all, so it looks like they're really moving to full open access.
Yeah, in the ACM there are a number of folks, hardware, operating systems, programming languages, and other communities that are very in the same sort of mindset that we are. We want to have open access. So the ACM is supposedly the Public Board has essentially approved this.
Yeah, that'll probably put a lot of pressure on it. Deb, do you want to?
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention, you know, as noted, the Canadian policy has now required open access, basically, in some form for government-funded research. And in fact, that's happening here in the US as well.
After 12 months.
Yeah, so there are specific obligations, and starting in January of 2016, any of the grants I know from the National Science Foundation will oblige authors to only submit to venues that will abide by those rules. So they're up on the website. So there's detailed stuff. It's not just open access in terms of accessibility on a website, but also archive and open metadata. So there's details. If you want to look at it, it's nsf.gov/open, O-P-E-N. And you can slip down to find the policy that came out in February. But all U.S. agencies that are funding research are going to be obliged to do that. So it seems to me that we're having some collection of governments around the world who are going to put pressure on organizations that, funding agencies will put pressure on authors who simply won't be able to publish in venues that don't have adequate support for open access.
So obviously, whatever the...
Robert notes true in the UK as well, so
obviously, whatever the policy is, we're going to have to abide by that. I mean, there's just no way we can not abide by the NSF policy. I'm certain the IEEE is having that conversation right now. So,
I would like to point out that none of that requires that it be free. And in the UK, people do pay a lot for that open access. And that's certainly not something we would want to do. But just because the government says open access, it doesn't mean that it comes for free. And people have to pay that out of their research budgets if that's what's required. I would like to offer one other way out of this. I actually am an open access radical. I would like to solve the world's problems on open access, but not through this organization. It's too small. For this organization, I believe that we can solve the website publication problem. I believe that it actually is Computer Society policy, and I believe that they lost track of that. But I believe that that's always been the intention of the Board of Governors. And I'm going to press on that in preference to any other solution. I do not like the as-submitted versions. I believe that bifurcating the publication process and corrupting it is really a wrong thing to do. I don't support it at all.
okay, I'm gonna try to bring this to a close. We got a couple things left to wrap up. What I'm hearing is, are we okay right now revisiting this again next year? There's a lot of moving parts. I heard there's a lot of things that are happening very quickly. We are moving in the right direction. Right now, we have, for the security and privacy, we have access to papers really, for everyone all the time, assuming people put them on their own websites. We have this 12-month window, which is not terrific. We're working on that. We're going to come back to them. I'm going to be in Atlanta for my last meeting in about 2 weeks. I'm going to press on them again. Are people comfortable with us standing pat and not making any big moves at least until next year? I'll say aye. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And frankly, thanks for your patience on all that. I know it's frustrating. So now, literally, we have about, if we can do this really quickly, there's a proposal for a workshop. And really what we're looking for is a general interest in whether or not this community, being the IEEE security privacy community, not just the conference, is interested in supporting a workshop. But again, we try to keep it close. Can we switch to the other?
So, yes, okay. So here's a picture of workshop that we held over the weekend. And this picture of the people who attended our GREPSEC workshop, it has some similarities to what you see when you sit here, but it has some big differences too. And this is particularly to support groups that are underrepresented in computer science research and for early stage graduate students. And so what we had was 41 students attending our workshop, all expenses paid. And we had a good program of speakers and good information for them, a lot of mentoring and encouragement to go into computer science. We would like to change the makeup of the audience here. Now, about 20 of our students were here. So in a sense, there's a synergy, there's a little bit of codependency developing between the two. This is the second time we held the workshop. We've been holding it every other year. What we want to do is to make it a permanent thing. We would like to increase diversity in the computer security research community. Why it's been diminishing is a source of mystery, but we'd like to start filling that pipeline. So what we're looking for funding, and we will be looking for funding over the next several months. What we'd like to have is something to tell potential donors that we have a community that does support this effort, wants it to be an ongoing thing, and they will, at some financial level, to be determined, are committed to seeing this go forward. So we would like a statement from the community, this community in particular, which is our home base in many ways, that they would like to support diversity. They're willing to put some amount of financing behind that and say that this is something to grow.
So what I'd like to do is I propose an endorsement. We don't know what our budget's going to be next year. What I'd like to do is at least, what I'd like to propose is that we give an endorsement in spirit. We don't know what our budget's going to be next year. We are going to, whatever funds we have available, we give funds to, I think we gave $20,000 this year to S&P to bring students in. We'd like to add that organization to the list of places that we're supporting. I think it's important. I don't know how much it's going to be until I know what the budget is going to be.
Can I just make one point? Alvaro worked very closely with us in the GREPSEC workshop, and it was actually a huge benefit to the IEEE Student Travel Fund because the GREPSEC workshop paid for their airfare. And so the students who also got a separate grant out of the IEEE grant money, didn't need as much money because they had their airfare paid for out of the GREPSEC funding. So there already this year was a good, synergy working together that really multiplied your funds.
Exactly. We can double count. We can get double benefit from this. So all in favor?
It was $65,000.
We're not.
That was 41 students, including international students, 2 nights hotel, and feeding them, for the 2 days. But we did get this money for the last 2 years from NSF, CRA, and small amounts from Microsoft and Google. But we need a sustained way to make that happen.
Right. It's just going to be a new slice of the pie that we're going to give, because we give to CSF and to SP. We're going to introduce this. So, do people endorse in principle our support of this organization? I'll say aye. Okay. So I want to recognize some people. People spend. Sometimes you forget when you come to these conferences. Damn it! I'm so used to the lapel mic. You sometimes forget how much time people put in. Over the last year, people have spent a tremendous amount of time supporting both the TC and the organization. And I'd like to give people a little token of our appreciation. First, I'd like to start with this. I'd like to recognize as I mentioned, probably the best chair, general chair we've ever had. And I'd like to recognize Sean Peiser for his appreciation, in our appreciation, his contributions. Next, I'd like to recognize somebody who got shanghaied into the organization to be a PC chair and has been absolutely devoted to the cause and gone above and beyond. And I would like to recognize Luyo Bauer with his Outstanding Contribution Award for his tremendous leadership of IEEE security and privacy.
And thank you from me to Luyo as well. Luyo was a tremendous partner to work with on the program side. I really appreciate it.
So I'd like to recognize some of the organizers. First, Kevin Butler. I don't believe he's here. I think he just stepped out. He wasn't feeling well. Jason Lee. All right. Oh, he didn't come. That's right. Mark Gontry. Please. Michael Lacosto, please. Michael's going to be our general chair next year, so he's got a lot of work ahead of him. Vitaly Shmatakov. What's that? You didn't say what was the award for. Showing up. Running the PC. Gabrielle Corciali. Zachary Peterson. Zachary here? Okay. And Cynthia Irvine. Sophie Engel? Sophie here? Oh, there she is. Alvaro? Alvaro? Cliff Wang. Cliff. So I want to finish with a little bit of a personal. So I actually, a couple of days ago, I sat down and I started thinking back. And 6 out of the last 10 years of my life have been involved in this organization. I did 2 years as the PC chair of S&P, 2 years as the vice chair, and 2 years as the chair. I took the job about 4 years ago. I think we can say that we were going through a difficult, complex time, and I took the job and to try to help maybe calm the waters and restructure the organization so that we could make things move a little bit more smoothly. And I think I take great pride in the fact that I think we're largely there. I think we're in a really good place. And a lot of it has to do, almost all of it has to do with a countless number of people. I thought about trying to thank all the people that have made the last 4 years memorable for me, and I'm not even going to try because I'm going to miss somebody. But I really wanted to thank the people in the community for bringing this together and spending countless hours making this organization work. And so I feel quite confident in returning to those seats where I don't have to be in the organization and I can watch as a spectator. So let me just close out the meeting by saying thank you to all for this last 4 years. It's been a gas. I've got a couple weeks left, or a couple months left, but I will slowly fade in to the sunset. So with that, thank you so much, and it's time for the PC party.